Hey, Olive, Arlo, and Frank. It's almost Thanksgiving, and this is an old book. I don't know when the movie came out. This was original, or not movie, TV show came out. This was originally a TV show, and the copyright of the book is 1974. I was originally going to read this book to you, but it's just going to be very, very difficult to do because it's set up like the TV show, and it has all these pictures that look just like this, and then a whole bunch of really small writing, and it was just going to be tedious to try to get through it. So I went online and I found that there's other people who have a better version of the book. I tried to find it online and I couldn't. Like um, an e-book that had the pictures and everything. These people have a better version of this thing. It has some different um, content in it, but it's basically the same story. I mean, it's a story about this little kid. Charlie Brown, his buddy Linus. There's some dirty kid with dirt falling off all the time. Linus always has a blankie. He travels around with his blanket. There's girl characters. The only one that I really know, because this wasn't real big with me. Like, I watched Charlie Brown Christmas, which was the original thing, and then they came up with, like, because the Peanuts characters, it was a comic strip in the newspaper. So when I was younger, if the newspaper was there, I would read the Peanuts comic strip. And it was always about these little kids. Charlie Brown always wore the same, like, kind of orange yellow shirt with black, this black up and down, looks like WWWWW all the way around his shirt. And you can see him there in the middle right picture. That's Charlie Brown talking to, I think her name's Lucy. The woman above, the girl above on the telephone, her name is Peppermint Patty, and she's like a tomboy. I had a good friend who was a cop named Pat Bradley, and that was her nickname, Peppermint Patty. She was kind of a tomboy herself. Anyway, the Thanksgiving story is a story of the Pilgrims coming to America, coming to this place where they thought, oh, there's not really many people there. And it turned out that there were a lot of people. There were Indians. They lived here. And I'm not going to get into the whole sordid history of the battles between the Indians and the settlers throughout the history of the United States. That's a story for another bunch of days. But in this story, the Thanksgiving story, these pilgrims, they were giving thanks for getting through their first winter, and then bringing in, and at least half of them died the first winter. And then the Indians had taught them how to plant stuff, which, I mean, they planted stuff when they were in England, and some of them spent some time in Holland, but they were English people originally from England. And they knew how to plant things, but they didn't know how to deal with conditions here, and the Indians introduced them supposedly to things like corn and squash that they didn't have over in Europe, but they grew here more readily. And may or may not taught them how to hunt. I'm sure they hunted when they were in England. That's how you got food back then. You went hunting. It wasn't the only way. There were farmers that grew things and produced livestock. But it was a much different world than today. And they were in this hostile environment, and they had this Thanksgiving meal supposedly for the Indians to thank them for helping them get a foothold on the continent. So the Pilgrims were these religious guys, and if you look at the very top left, there's Charlie Brown looking out of his door, front door of his house, and there's a dog there. The dog's name is Snoopy. He's dressed as a pilgrim, and behind him is Woodstock, who's this bird. I think that Snoopy might be Charlie Brown's dog, but I'm not sure exactly which family he belongs to. You don't really meet the adults in this. In fact, when they're talking to adults, these are little guys. These are, 3-4-year-old kids, and so the adults, all you see is up to their knees, and the kids looking up at them. And when the adults are talking, they just go like wah 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 wah, which is what little kids hear a lot of times when you talk. There's a little black kid in here over to the left. I don't know that there was black kids in this. I don't think in the very beginning, but as America went through all the stuff with the civil rights movement in the 60s and all kinds of things, I mean, there was slavery in the United States until the mid-1860s. And there's certainly still racism in the United States. The demographics of the United States have gotten more and more diverse over time. And so if they were doing this book now, this TV show now, it would be very diverse. It wouldn't just be a bunch of white kids with one black kid. There'd be, white, yellow, red, black, brown, all different people who originally came from various places in the world, because it's a more diverse culture now. But this is going back, this book is from the 1970s. I was 21 when this book came out. I was actually just had gotten into the Air Force the year that this book came out. I was in from 74 to 77. So without further ado, let's find this thing. Bear with me for a second. There's some pictures of, and this is a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, which children's books read aloud. Shout out to them. It's the last minute. I would have found this thing all by myself, but hey, I can't do that. So I'm gonna steal this. Happy Culture, I think, is the name of the people. I've subscribed to them. I thought I did. So I'll give a shout out to them later. Charlie Brown Thanksgiving. Peanuts, that was the name of the series, by Charles Schulz. So Charlie Brown goes to it's Thanksgiving, and Charlie Brown's friend Lucy can't wait to celebrate. Charlie Brown, I'll hold this football and you kick it, Lucy says. You can't fool me, says Charlie Brown. I'll come running up and you'll pull the football away like you always do. But one of the best traditions is the Thanksgiving football game, says Lucy, and the most important part is the kickoff. Charlie Brown thinks Lucy will let him kick the football if it's a holiday tradition. He runs toward the football, but she pulls it away again. So you see on the left page, she's up in the air because he tried to kick it, but she pulled the football out. And then he goes whoomp down on the ground. Later, Charlie Brown is talking with his sister Sally and his friend Linus, and that's him with the blanket. Why should I give thanks on Thanksgiving, Sally asks. I haven't even finished eating my Halloween candy yet. Besides, All Thanksgiving does is make more work for us in school. I don't know what that means. Linus disagrees. Thanksgiving is a very important holiday, he explains. Ours was the first country in the world to make a national holiday to give thanks. So it looks like Sally likes Linus. Sally sighs and stares lovingly at Linus. Isn't he the cutest thing? Linus just rolls his eyes. What are you going to do on Thanksgiving, Charlie Brown? Sally, that's Charlie Brown's little sister. Sally and I are going over to our grandmother's house for dinner, Charlie Brown says. As soon as they get back home, Charlie Brown gets a call from Peppermint Patty. And oh boy, so now we get a commercial. Gets a call from Peppermint Patty. My dad said I could join you for Thanksgiving, she says. I don't mind inviting myself over since I know you kind of like me, Chuck. And she's the only one that calls him that. Charlie Brown tries to explain that he's going to his grandmother's house for dinner, but Peppermint Patty keeps talking over him. By the way, I told Marcy and Franklin is the black kid, I think, about the big turkey dinner you're having, so you can count on us for dinner. Peppermint Patty has invited herself, Marcy, and Franklin over for Thanksgiving dinner, and I'm not even going to be home, Charlie Brown groans to Linus. Linus has an idea. You can have two dinners. Cook the first one for your friends, and then go to your grandmother's house with your family for the second one. And you see, Charlie Brown's always like, the world just happens to Charlie Brown. Linus is like the wise one. But there's one flaw to Linus's plan. Charlie Brown doesn't know how to cook. All I can make is cold cereal and toast, Charlie Brown admits. Linus isn't discouraged. Maybe we could help, he said. Snoopy, go out to the garage and get a table for the backyard. Snoopy salutes Linus and gets to work. Snoopy and Woodstock, he's the bird, find an old ping pong table and they bring it outside. Then Snoopy sets up chairs around the table, lawn chairs, beach chairs, rocking chairs, enough for everyone. To top it off, they add a pretty tablecloth, set the table, and even fold the napkins for each place setting. No parents around, huh? Your grandmother wouldn't be real happy with this situation. She'd be putting the kibosh on this. Now that the table is ready, Snoopy, Woodstock, Charlie Brown, and Linus start to make Thanksgiving dinner. Linus and Charlie Brown set up toasters and put in slices of bread. Once the bread is toasted, Snoopy butters all the pieces and stacks them on a serving platter. While Linus and Charlie Brown get popcorn, jelly beans, and pretzels, Snoopy and Woodstock disappear for a minute, and then they return dressed up like pilgrims. Charlie Brown isn't impressed. How can you serve the food in that ridiculous outfit? He scolds Snoopy. The guests will soon be here. Snoopy sighs and reaches for his chef's hat. Snoopy's a wise guy, kind of. They're having popcorn, jelly beans. Soon, Peppermint Patty, Marcy, and Franklin arrive and follow Charlie Brown out to the big table in the backyard. It's time for dinner. Snoopy is about to serve the guests when Peppermint Patty cuts in. Shouldn't we say grace first, she asks. And this is something that we do at our house. We say grace before dinner. Linus stands up. In the year 1621, the Pilgrims had their first Thanksgiving feast, he begins. Elder William Brewster, who was a minister, said a prayer that went something like this. We thank God for our homes and food and our safety in a new land. We thank God for the opportunity to create a new world for freedom and justice. Amen, Peppermint Patty says. Snoopy lifts the lid off a big platter and reveals the feast. Freshly popped popcorn, colorful jelly beans, salty pretzel sticks, and a stack of hot buttered toast. He loads up each guest's plate and sends it sailing over to them. Peppermint Patty frowns. What kind of Thanksgiving dinner is this? Where's the turkey, cranberry sauce, and pumpkin pie, Chuck? She asks Jolly Brown. Don't you know anything about Thanksgiving dinners? What blockhead made all this? She throws down her popcorn in disgust. Sounds kind of ungrateful to me. Looks like a pretty good meal. Snoopy pulls his chef's hat down over his face. Charlie Brown gets up and walks away from the table. You were kind of rough on Charlie Brown, Marcy says to Peppermint Patty. Rough? Peppermint Patty shouts. We were supposed to be served a real Thanksgiving dinner. But did he invite you here, Marcy asks? Or did you invite yourself and us, too? You can see the time of year, the leaves are falling off the trees. Peppermint Patty thinks for a minute. She knows Marcy is right. Marcy, maybe you could go to Chuck and patch things up for me. Marcy isn't so sure that's a good idea. I think maybe you should go to Chuck and tell him yourself, she says. I'll just ruin everything. You go and speak for me. So she's afraid to talk to him, and there's Snoopy with the hat down. Back in the house, Marcy finds Charlie Brown in the living room, looking upset. Peppermint Patty didn't mean all those things, she said, Marcy tells him. Actually, she really likes you. I'm just sorry I ruined everyone's Thanksgiving, he moans. That's the way Charlie Brown is. But Marcy knows Charlie Brown is missing the point. Thanksgiving isn't about eating, she says. We should be thankful for being together. That's what Thanksgiving is all about, and it is. Peppermint Patty sneaks up behind the two of them. Apologies accepted? She asks, offering to shake hands with Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown smiles and shakes her hand. Just then the clock chimes. Good grief, Charlie Brown cries. It's 4 o'clock. He and Sally are supposed to be at their grandmother's house in half an hour. Charlie Brown picks up the phone and dials his grandmother's number. That's an old school phone. Charlie Brown starts to tell his grandmother that they'll be late for dinner because their friends haven't eaten yet. But after a minute, he breaks into a huge grin. Everyone, Charlie Brown, Sally, Franklin, Linus, Peppermint Patty, and Marcy, is invited to Thanksgiving dinner at his grandmother's house. And you guys are all in Chattanooga. Peppermint Patty runs to the backyard. We're all invited to Charlie Brown's grandmother's for Thanksgiving dinner, he cries. Everyone cheers, and that's, their mouths are open. That's why it looks like that. And the dog's doing a Snoopy shuffle, the happy dance. After the gang piles into the car, they settle into their seats and wave goodbye to Snoopy and Woodstock. Isn't there an old song about going to grandmother's house? Marcy asks. Peppermint Patty nods, and all the kids start to sing. Over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. The horse knows the way to carry the sleigh. Over the wind we go. Whoo! Back at Snoopy's doghouse, Snoopy and Woodstock put the finishing touches on their own Thanksgiving dinner with pumpkin pie for dessert. Thanksgiving is always special, especially when you celebrate it with friends. And like I say, you guys are all in Chattanooga. You're going to have Thanksgiving tomorrow. All of this is your first Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. Peace out, everybody.